This video is brought to you by Esker. More on them at the end of the video. Sean Hollister of The Verge originally reviewed the Steam Deck as not ready. I love the Steam Deck. It's my main way to play games, but I do agree with him. The Steam Deck still isn't quite a mainstream product. You just have too many hoops to jump through for the average consumer. That being said, I think that Valve can adjust many of those hoops in order to make them easier for the consumer. That's what early access is all about, right? Having early adopters assist in getting rid of all those sharp edges so that people that can't or won't deal with that stuff have an easier time down the road. While Hollister just put out a new interview with Lawrence Yang and Pierre-Luc Greffy where he called the Steam Deck early access. And again, I have to say I agree. And apparently Valve agrees as well. They said, sure, you're going to have a stable experience playing games on the deck, but the software is going to constantly be changing. This is quite a bit different from mainline consoles, where for the most part, you don't tend to see huge changes in the operating system over time. Now that we early access people have access to the deck, the bug list grows, and even as they cross features off their list, we keep requesting new stuff. For instance, they recently shipped the horizontal performance overlay, and the second that I saw it, my first thought was to ask for it to be customizable so I can pick and choose which stats I want to keep an eye on. Now, for the last 10 months, Valve has updated the deck at a blistering pace, and while I'm here for it, sometimes that has allowed some nasty bugs to find their way past all the testing and into the stable channel. Because of this, Valve has said that they plan to slow the cadence of releases to around once per month, but hey, you can always choose to be on the bleeding edge with me in the preview channel. You're just going to have more bugs. The fact that Valve is so dedicated to the software side of things makes me think that they are using the deck as a Trojan horse in order to offboard people from Windows. Is that a thing? Offboard? Whatever, it is now. In order to make Linux the de facto operating system for gaming. That is a very big hill to climb, but Valve has deep pockets, and they don't answer to shareholders, so if anyone can do it, it's them. Speaking of software, they talked about quite a few things that we can expect in the future of SteamOS. For instance, fixes for Bluetooth audio lag. I only use wired headphones with my deck because it forces you to use higher quality yet slower Bluetooth codec, which means you tend to have a huge delay from what you see on screen and what you hear in your headphones. It's more noticeable on certain games for me. Eventually, SteamOS should have the ability for you to select which codec you want. They're also working on an audio mixer so you can better dial in your game audio, chat audio, and music audio. This is awesome, as I do find it hard to get the right balance of what I can hear and what's blowing out my eardrums. They said they are working on the Linux audio stack to introduce ducking, which basically could automatically lower game sounds when you have incoming voice chat. That's really cool, but I do hope that they give us lots of manual control there. One thing I've been requesting for ages is the ability to share per game profiles. So say if Deckverse figures out his golden 40 settings for some game, I don't have to follow a guide. I can just grab it like I can a Steam input configuration from SteamOS. Valve has said that they've considered it, but it's too massive an undertaking to do right now. Instead, they may let you share all of the stuff from SteamOS, like the TDP and refresh rate, the kind of stuff that's behind the quick access menu. But the game settings are all found inside the game, and each game handles things a little bit differently, so that makes it hard to share everything. They've also said that they're still pushing on getting anti-cheat software to be Linux compatible. We still can't play games like Destiny 2 or Fortnite, but Valve has said they're making progress on games like Halo Master Chief Collection and Fall Guys. This is surprising to me because Fortnite is an Epic game, and Epic owns Easy Anti-Cheat, which is what Master Chief runs on. They also own Fall Guys, so why is it that those games and not Fortnite? And Destiny 2 has zero excuses in my book because they already had the game running on Linux when it was a Stadia launch title back in 2019. The interview wasn't all about software, they also talked about hardware as well. iFixit, which is a website dedicated to fixing your own electronics, called the Steam Deck's heavily glued battery the deck's Achilles heel in terms of repairability. Valve said it was necessary in order to make sure that the battery isn't rattling around inside the deck. That could cause all kinds of problems. But with recent hardware revisions, They are attempting to make the deck more repairable, so if you have a new deck, perhaps yours is a bit easier to deal with than my pre-release unit. Speaking of pre-release units, I received my Steam Deck before they actually came out, courtesy of Valve. And those early units have what's called the Delta fan. The Delta fan was pretty noisy, so once people complained, Valve switched to a different fan. You can find out which one you have in your system settings. Well, it looks like if you have a newer deck, you may still get the Delta fan, but they've updated it with an engineered foam solution in order to get rid of the noise. One other thing that they've updated hardware-wise is improving the feel of the Steam and Quick Access menu buttons. I've often complained that they feel too flat, hard to find, and there isn't a very satisfying click when you activate them. They just kind of feel mushy. Well, in August, Valve started shipping decks with new versions of that as well. If you have access to an old deck and a newer deck, do those buttons feel different? Let me know in the comments down below. If you've watched my stuff before, then you know that I love the Steam controller. I've said many times that I think Valve is making a new controller and we'll see it next year alongside a console from them. Well, it looks like I'm partially right and partially wrong. Let's start with the part that I got wrong, the console part, Steam machines. If you're unaware, Valve tried to get into the living room a few years back by asking third parties to ship micro PCs with SteamOS on them. They failed horribly. There were a bunch of reasons, but the big reason was that they didn't have Proton in order to make it easy to get your library playable on Linux. Well, it looks like Valve is experimenting on a console, but they don't want to stretch their resources too thin, so they are far more interested in allowing third parties to take a crack at that and just provide the software. I personally would really like to see a reference device from Valve like the Steam Deck, but without a screen, but I guess they can just point to the deck and the dock and say, see, it works great. Now make it more powerful. This approach makes a lot of sense. If they give away the software and you can just buy a micro PC that comes with a Steam controller too, you are off to the races. Yes, I said Steam controller 2. That's the part I was right about. Yang said, I think it's likely that we'll explore that because it's something we wanted as well. Right now we're focusing on the deck, so it's a little bit of the same as the micro console question. It's definitely something where we'd be excited to work with a third party or explore ourselves. Now, personally, I don't think that they would say, yes, we want to make that happen if they weren't actively working on it. Valve tends to keep their cards close to the chest. And the biggest problem with SteamOS on TVs is the lack of inputs from most controllers. Now, whether Valve manufactures it themselves is to be determined, but if it has all the bells and whistles of the Steam Deck without the screen, it's going to be a day one buy from me. Speaking of controllers, I have a video coming out very soon about what might be the best joysticks I've ever used, so make sure you subscribe if you want to hear about that. Hollister also asked them about the Steam Deck too. Valve said that right now, the fact that all the Steam Decks can play the same games and that we have one target for users to understand what kind of performance level to expect when you're playing, and for developers to understand that target, there's a lot of value to having one spec. That's a very console-like experience. You don't have to worry about what hardware you have, but it also starts to get muddy when the possible third-party Steam machines come out. I think this statement is definitely a temporary one. And once Valve can get a bigger gain instead of something incremental, they will drop new hardware. I still think that 2024 is the year for the Steam Deck 2. I've talked about this a million times, but a tick-tock upgrade cycle where customers who bought the Deck 1 skip the Deck 2 and get the Deck 3, and then you have customers who didn't get the Deck 1 start with the Deck 2, and then maybe they get the Deck 4. Bringing out new hardware every 2 years allows Valve to keep the hardware fresh and allows Valve to keep up with the demands of newer PC titles. They covered quite a bit of ground in the interview, and if you want to read the whole thing, which I think you should, I've linked it in the description. But what do you all think? What questions did Valve not answer? Let me know in the comment section down below. And before you take off, I want to mention our sponsor, and that's Esker. This video is sponsored by Esker. Esker makes wallets with a twist. They all have this little button on them, and when you push that button, your credit cards all pop out. You can see all of your cards at once, grab exactly the one that you're looking for, and slide everything else back in. They don't come out when you shake them, they only come out when you push the button. So you can rest assured that all of your stuff is secure in an Esker wallet. They have tons of options. I chose the carbon fiber wallet because I like the way it looks, but they also have metal wallets and leather wallets, and if you're looking for really good gift ideas, make sure you check out the link in the description down below. So get up to 40% off Esker wallets this Christmas by using the code NerdNest at checkout, or just click on the link in the description down below. Big thank you to Esker for supporting this channel, and if you want to support our channel, then support our sponsors.